welcome everybody to this special edition of the Staff Academy webinar series. My name is Kai Weaver, and today I'm joined by my colleague Kati, who will be recording and providing technical support for us. As the holiday season approaches, we're taking a moment to share and learn about Education Lab joint projects, innovation in teaching and learning across the INGENIUM European University. Education labs were established to encourage new ideas and practical approaches in higher education. The aim is simple: to bring together educators, students, and partners from 10 universities to co-design methods, tools, and solutions for real challenges in teaching and learning. An education lab is not just a single place. It is a decentralized network that uses the expertise and facilities of our partner universities. These virtual and physical spaces allow staff, students, and stakeholders to work together, exchange knowledge, and build connections. In 2024, INGENIUM funded a number of joint education lab projects to turn ideas into realities. These 12 projects focused on developing and sharing innovative teaching methods, pedagogies, and tools across INGENIUM. These are not expected to be perfect or complete because experimentation is a core part of what we do in these projects. Today, we will hear 3 short presentations from these projects, what they have aimed to achieve, what they have learned, and what impact they are making. Each presentation will be about 20 minutes long, after which there'll be 10 minutes for discussion. We really encourage you to ask lots of questions, no matter how silly they are, especially if you have your own new projects coming up or starting now, because the more we can learn from each other, the easier we can make this process for everybody. So I will now hand the floor to Carlia and stop sharing. I'll let you introduce the project and carry on. Carlia, the floor is yours.
Hello, thank you very much, Kai. This was a very, very good introduction. I love the part that said, no matter whether they were perfect or complete, I have to disappoint you there. We completed phase 1 properly. We managed to do the whole project that we aspired and planned. So our project, I'm Kalia Katsamouksagi-Hodges from the University of Crete. The proposal for phase 1, it was a proposal with 3 phases, and this education lab basically was just phase 1. It was submitted by Thomas O'Mahony from the Munster Technological University, but the people that you see there are all involved in the project, actively involved, including Kai and Oana that are joining us today. Let me say a few things about the project. As you can see, this is about assessment. This is about inclusive assessment in higher education. And partners are Munster Technological University, the University of Crete, Southern Eastern Finland University of Applied Sciences, IASI, is it there? And a few others that joined us later on in the second phase. But I'm not going to mention now because we are just describing phase 1. We meant to organize webinars in order to talk about assessment, inclusive assessment, all different types of assessment, and how important assessment literacy is when it comes to designing inclusive learning environments. And we did this having in mind that we want to foster a culture of, practitioners that like to share things. We didn't create the webinars with a mindset of a normative expert who tells people what they're supposed to do. But we shared our practices, our action research, and our knowledge based on all the trial and error method, the cases that we had experienced. And we were open for discussion and reflection. And we deliberately chose this way of presenting stuff because we thought that in order to convince other colleagues to take up action research and do similar things and be reflective practitioners, you have to be vulnerable as well and open to criticism and feedback, not just criticism. As you can see here, the team recorded structured webinar content covering assessment literacy, student-centered design, AI-enabled feedback, culturally responsive and multimodal assessment, and sustainable feedback practices. Let me go to the proper beginning of my presentation, which is basically what problem we are addressing. We are addressing the fact that assessment in higher education is often seen as summative, a final exam that is supposed to be using standardized ways of measuring, same way, one way for all, in order to pass or fail students, at the same time implying that they if they pass, that they have known and understood the content that is being taught. The thing is that assessment in higher education is often treated as fixed and inherited. It's an inherited problem as we see it. And especially when it comes to the age of AI, because we have addressed aspects to do with that as well, the AI basically made us realize even more so that assessment is not just the thing you do at the end of a semester, but basically it shapes what students learn, how they learn. It shapes their motivation, their confidence. It may include learners or exclude learners, depending on what have you decided as a designer of learning environments to do. All these small design choices you make as an instructor, as a faculty member who is also a designer of learning environments, matter. And basically, another thing that I have included here is a nice little picture that we have from our last meeting, from a webinar, where we consider AI and how this has transformed actually our own. It actually made us realize how narrow our assessment perspectives have been. We addressed misconceptions in our webinars, and one of the misconceptions that we addressed were about standardization equaling fairness. And you can see a nice little picture I've got there. You can see on the left-hand side how everything is standardized, same exam for all, and what this means about the opportunity, the potential for progress allows for these people, our learners in this case. And on the right-hand side, you can see that standardization sometimes is not the best thing we can do, because assessment is not just about measuring things. It's not about measurement. It's not about grades. It's about many more choices that also affect the way we teach and what we prioritize. So we did talk about assessment typologies, and we did talk about purposes of assessment. Of course we did, but we did focus mainly on assessment as learning as an alternative. We prioritize to some extent reflective learning and feedback practices and feedback loops and feeding forward students, So in a way, to say that it is our responsibility to empower students to succeed and not just use assessment as policemen that will say, yes, passport control, yes, you go, no, you stay there, you can't go anymore, this kind of thing. Beyond typology, though, when it comes to assessment literacy, because we tried to bring this up as much as we could and make it more explicit. Beyond typology, we also reflected on other dimensions, like the social dimensions of learning, the ethical responsibilities, the cultural considerations, and how this may not be appropriate if they're not, how assessment may not be appropriate if that aspect especially is not taken into account, disciplinary practices, cognitive processes, and emotional experience of assessment. And this is my slide. The slide I will talk about our approach very quickly, and then Thomas will carry on from here. So the approach we used was, as I said in the very beginning, that of a community of practice. We wanted to learn through engagement, through dialogue, through shared reflection. We did not want to prescribe anything that the literature says is correct or right or the thing to do. We just wanted to negotiate and basically discuss and reevaluate and readjust our assumptions and how these assumptions that we have as educators basically guide our choices and how do our students experience those choices that we make. What evidence do we rely on as educators? And of course, we provided a scaffold for reflection, not a rule book, as we say here. Thomas, would you like to carry on from here, or?
Sure. Thanks a million, Kaya. Would you mind if you go into the view there? I think you can go to full screen mode and or maybe even there slides. Amazing. Thanks a million. Hi folks, I'm Tom O'Mahony from Munster Technological University. So in terms of the implementation, as you can see here, and as Kalia was mentioning, we were looking at that community of practice, and we supported that through webinars. So we kind of, I guess, decided on some topics that were of interest to us, and used the webinars then to kind of share and discuss. So looking at assessment literacy and thinking about students. Kelly's already mentioned about the generative AI piece. We're really delighted that Kathleen Quinlan from the UK joined us to talk about kind of inclusive assessment and feedback, and then looking at kind of feed forward and assessment for learning. So those were some of the things, I guess, that we explored. And on the next slide, then, what I guess the impact of this then was really about sharing some of those practices via that community of practice. So thinking about assessment and what's working and what are some of the challenges. We have designed an online course focused on assessment. So we've been thinking about the learning outcomes and obviously the content and how we'd go about assessing it. So that's all ready. And again, thinking about translating some of that content into an ebook, and then thinking about how we could continue, because we've really found it useful and beneficial to connect with each other and share, and would love to continue on doing that. So I guess in terms of INGENIUM, what we see maybe as of interest is that assessment is a common challenge, I guess, across INGENIUM, and particularly, the emergence, I guess, of generative AI has made something that's problematic perhaps even more problematic, and maybe inequitable too. If we think of MTU's context, the standard, or one of the common kind of approaches, is to think to go back to kind of closed book end of semester exams, and we know, for example, that they are that they're not very that they pose real challenges for lots of learners. So it's not really the ideal solution, or even the best solution perhaps, and we think that there's huge potential there across kind of the INGENIUM network to start looking at, well, how are others doing this, and how are they thinking about it, and what sort of approaches are they using, and there's real scope, I think, to learn from each other there and begin to share some practices and and think about how we, and I suppose think about how we do assessment into the future. And I think over to you, Kai.
Thank you. And this is where we have the wonderful reflection part of the presentation, where we think about how collaboration actually proceeded in our team. So initially, I wasn't in the project, and neither was Oana. We joined later, but this was actually quite a really natural way of proceeding. We didn't really know what we were joining. We heard about the topic and thought it was great, and then we joined. But we had a great starting meeting in the beginning where we looked at the topics from the proposal, found the areas that we would want to contribute that related to our own expertise, and were flexible in the original plan. And I think that was really wonderful, because sometimes you have these project plans where you can't deviate from on pain of death. But this was really great because we had the flexibility to say, okay, we have new people joining the team, some people dropping out. Let's think about what we can contribute and deliver what we enjoy rather than what was originally promised. When we recorded the videos in Crete in October, which was a really wonderful time to visit, the team at UOC were really welcoming and made us feel very at home, and they gave us great feedback on our videos and our scripts and our presentations, and that was really fun to do. And I think the collaboration worked really well because we all believed in the aims of the project. We'd all had ownership over it somehow, and we shared a common desire to transform assessment within our own institutions. We've seen bad assessment, we've experienced bad assessment, and we wanted to do better. And we were also really open and honest with each other. This was, I think, for most of us, it seems a bit cliche to say, but a project of passion or a passion project that we were doing on top of our existing workload. So it was sometimes difficult to find the time to contribute to this, but it was really rewarding when we did. What would we do differently? So I think what I would have loved to have done differently is started the project with a kickoff meeting in person and had a bit more time together to get to know each other at the beginning. But the collaboration proceeded well enough online. We've been through a lot of online teaching in our institutions, and we've made networks online, so it didn't really matter so much. The in-person days and the mobility was a really crucial part of developing this project. I think we'd also plan and schedule the webinars and topics at the beginning of the project and share them with our communication teams a bit more in advance. But these are things that you learn as you're going along. As I said, this was often a bit of a side project for us, so it was difficult to sometimes find the time. Webinar attendance was not always high, but when it was high, there was really good discussion. And I think I valued this more to have discussion rather than lots of people attending the webinars. And what are we doing next? Well, phase 2 is the MOOC that we've already started working on. We've adapted the materials from the webinar that we've made in phase 1 and recorded them in Crete for phase 2 so that they can go straight into the MOOC on assessment. We're expanding the content that we've done, and we'll hopefully deliver a 10-credit, 8-week asynchronous MOOC and think about how we can also offer this as a micro-credential. We're translating the material into... Why are we translating the material into English when it was written in English? The material is written in English, and we're going to translate it into Greek, Finnish, Romanian, French, and Italian, with the inclusion of our 2 new partners from from Italy and France. And we've just applied for a 3rd round of funding to create an edited volume. So from this one project, a lot of fun was had, as you might have seen from the holiday work photos that we shared in the previous slide. And it was just a really rewarding project to do with Kalia, Dom, and Oana, like really wonderful. And I think that's it.
It was a real pleasure for all of us, I have to say, despite all the work, and it was a lot of work. Thank you, Kai. Thank you, everyone. Yeah.
And I think now we have some time for questions. So I'll take off my presenter hat and put on the facilitating hat. Do we have any questions for the presenters or myself about this webinar? We've got a few minutes for this. Jeremiah, please.
Yeah, so where are you going to host the MOOC? Will that be on the INGENIUM education platform? Is that the intention there? Yeah.
Yep.
Very good. I was just curious, yeah.
So that was a bit of a one-word answer. But yeah, it will be added to the INGENIUM course catalog. It will be open to everybody. And it will also be shared within institutions when it's ready.
Nice. Very good.
Oh, and we're actually planning a launch event for this. I forgot to mention that. In spring, we're in Romania and France with 2 workshops where we're going to organize sort of mini conference around the topic of the MOOC to get more people interested and spread the word of what we've been doing in the project. Are there any other questions? Please go ahead.
Hi, Kai. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, perfect.
Yeah. No, I was just wondering, like, are you all in kind of academic developer roles? Like, I would imagine this is hugely valuable for people who are teaching other lecturers and stuff like that. That was the focus of the community of practice?
May I? I have been the coordinator of the Teaching and Learning Center at the University of Crete. I actually was the person that founded that center many, many years ago. And now I'm at the academic board, basically as a consultant for the people that coordinate the center. So yes, I have been in faculty development, not just for our university, also in the Greek network of other universities, and contributed with a few, with research and educational material that I have provided for other Greek universities. Yes, I have a passion about faculty development, and it's something that backed me ever since I started teaching at UOC, because I don't know if it's just a local thing. I suspect it isn't. We do tend to hire and promote faculty members without knowing that or without checking about their pedagogical content knowledge. And this is a key issue that we are trying to address here. Most people teach recreating experiences that they've had as students themselves 50 or 60 years ago. And this is not right, especially at this time now, where things are changing so rapidly. But thank you for asking, David.
Thanks. And I'm the exception in the team because I'm a what would you call it? Reformed academic. So I work now in a support service role, and I help our staff mostly produce content in English, whether it's publications or course material, to improve the learning experience for our international staff and for some of the commercial products we work. So that's sort of been my angle, which is slightly different.
But it was very important, and your contribution was really valuable. Tom is also in faculty development, as far as I remember. Tom?
Yeah, I would be. Anyhow, I'll let Joanne speak for herself. I think she's still on the call.
Sorry?
Yes, I'm here. So I'm just a teacher, actually. I'm not in development. But I enjoy seeing that everything I teach will be well received by the students, and the feedback is the most important, actually. How we evaluate them just at the moment or during the entire semester. And I tried, actually, before I meet Kaliaka and Thomas, to change my assessment methods regarding what students actually want. So I just found this project and I said it's for me. Thank you.
It's great that in our team, I think what we all share in common is that we are all reflective educators. We are all reflective practitioners, and we don't take anything for granted. And we challenge, we question absolutely everything that we even say as being correct, depending on whether it's a good fit for our context, for our discipline, for our countries, because cultural elements also apply. Yeah.
I can't find the hand raising function. Sorry, so I do it the old school style. May I?
Please go ahead.
Yeah, I came in a few minutes late, so I could have missed this. I'm not sure, but it was a seminar that you created. I saw the titles of each section, and was it all recorded then to be somehow a course that we can take, or have there already been course participants who've then taken the seminar?
So we record webinars, and then we decided to upscale them by recording them again in a professional studio.
Okay.
And the course will be live in the spring. So we're now assembling the webinar content into the course and then building upon it, adding reading and assessment and all that wonderful stuff.
Okay. Will it be completely asynchronous, or will it? Yeah. Okay. So
Yeah, I think so.
self-learning then.
Yes, it's an
Okay.
asynchronous course. It's open access, free of charge. What else can I say? With lots of resources, translated in 5 different languages.
Okay.
I don't think, not in German though, because we didn't have a partner, but we can do that if you want.
It's okay. I'm an English native speaker.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, just in case, because I
Yeah.
just realized we haven't done that.
True. Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, we're looking forward to launch this MOOC. I think it's the end of January we're launching it, and then the ebook based on on phase 3 we have an ebook that is basically reporting empirical research from action research that colleagues conducted during and because of that MOOC.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. So that's all from our team, and now we're going to hand the floor over to, let me just find my notes. Who do we have next? The next project is Chemit, exploring organic chemistry through immersive technologies, which is Jeremiah, Fiona, and Raquel.
Hi.
Hi.
So yeah, I'm going to share the presentation. Documents. Oh, let's see. Sorry, I'm having some problems to share it. Oh, here. Here it is. And I think that is sharing the presentation.
Sharing the kind of PowerPoint edit window, Raquel.
I don't know what happened with, here. Can you see? Oh,
that's presenter notes. No.
So if you go to the top left there, it says,
let's see if here.
Portuguese isn't very good. Oh, yeah, perfect.
There. Yeah, that's it.
There. There. That is like, yeah, I have 2 monitors, so sometimes it makes weird things. So we are going to present a project about exploring organic chemistry through immersive technologies. And we realized that technology has transformed almost every area in education. And the university student is rarely without a smartphone, a laptop or tablet that they use sometimes in the classroom. And the use of this technology sometimes is viewed as the way of distracting the students and disrupting the learning process. But we can also leverage these digital technologies to aid in the learning projects, as digital technology allows for a higher degree of interactivity, and help students to acquire knowledge in a more effective way. This interactivity is even more useful in fields as organic chemistry, where the basic concepts of atomic structure, bonding, the structure of chemical bonds is often very difficult to understand for the students. Organic chemistry itself is a complex field of study. The student must think critically, and they are not used to that. They are used to memorizing. And in organic chemistry is not much of memorized, because every organic problem is different in itself, and the solution must be tailored for every case. And even more complex is the way that the fact that the organic chemistry, the structures are three-dimensional. And this three-dimensional structure is the basic foundation of organic chemistry, and for students it's always very difficult to get the three-dimensional structure from the two-dimensional structures that I draw in the when teaching. And it is other problem that we observe in the last several years is that it's increasingly difficult for us to capture and maintain the attention of the students, because they are used to visual things and digital tools, and this is probably the moment to change the way in which we teach chemistry, because we really had to capture students' attention, and they are used to more visual things or visual representations. And the thing is that they are not very fond of Blackboard. They think that it's dated and boring. But on the other hand, teaching using a Blackboard, teaching organic chemistry is essential, because it's all about drawing the structures. And the chemical reactivity is all about moving electron pairs. So you really had to show students how the electrons are moving. But anyway, you show how the electrons are moving. You try to represent in the Blackboard three-dimensional structures. But as the Blackboard is two-dimensional, and this is not always easy to understand for the students. For example, there is probably the most basic but the most important concept of organic chemistry, because it's related to biological activity, is chirality. Chirality is the way in which, as the carbon is as the shape of the carbon is tetrahedral, you can have two molecules that are mirror images, but they have completely different biological activity. And chirality is in every biological aspect. This photo of a snail is not by chance. It's like if you look at the snails, the way in which this form is in the shell is always moving to the right, not to the left, because then so you are not going to find the other mirror image in the nature. And this is chirality is essential, but it's very difficult to explain in the two-dimensional environment. So we we envision the use of immersive technologies that can not only can help to capture a student's attention, but also can help to explain in a more in a better way the concepts of chirality, because it's better to explain three-dimensional. You are going to move in a three-dimensional space, and it's going to be better for understanding concepts as chirality. So now is Fiona turn.
It's my turn, and I will ask you, Raquel, to click the slides. Okay, so my name is Fiona. I'm doing my PhD at the Karlsruhe University of Applied Sciences in the fields of learning in virtual reality. So yeah, my topic is quite suitable to this concept that we've thought of and we wanted to try out. So one possibility of enhancing chemistry lectures would be with virtual reality in, for example, a virtual classroom. For example, the one we are already working with at the Karlsruhe University of Applied Sciences, in which I'm also doing my PhD. A virtual classroom is basically a social VR application in which multiple students can meet in a shared virtual space, even though they're physically located in different places. And through their head-mounted displays or VR glasses, they get the feeling of being together in one common learning environment. Okay, next slide. What a possible VR classroom can look like. This is our VR campus. It contains several areas, and the most relevant one for teaching would be the lecture platform that you see here. On this platform, different didactic formats are possible. So anything from discussion and collaboration to more traditional unidirectional formats of teaching. And also, as Raquel also already mentioned, implementing 3D models of molecules. Okay, and next, please. So the other areas, click one more time, yeah. And now you should see a video. Maybe you can click somewhere to make it play. I hope it plays.
It isn't this slide?
It should be a video. Yeah.
Oh, oh yes.
So I hope you can see this relatively fluidly. So a key advantage of a social VR application is that we can, as I said, integrate 3D objects into the virtual space. Here's a short example. In this video, students are gathered in a discussion circle, and they pass a virtual flame from one person to another to signal whose turn it is to speak. And all those students are participating from different locations. And yeah, they only need internet access and a bit of space to move around in the physical place, and they can join the virtual reality. And besides discussion and collaboration, we can also teach content in a more traditional way, lecture-based, as you can see here, 2D slides. But our goal is to increasingly use 3D models, because this is what the medium of VR is especially suited for. And this is why the use case of implementing chemical content would be really interesting for us with the VR campus also. Because not only does 3D content make learning more tangible and easier, it also allows us to interact with 3D objects, which, as Raquel said, is very important for molecules which are also changing and adapting. So what we can do in virtual reality is we can make objects larger or smaller, or rotate them, or walk around them, or even walk inside them. So this means that like an object like a chemical content becomes more comprehensible, and abstract chemical concepts can be visualized in new ways. So this is an example where we implemented three-dimensional objects in the VR classroom. The students are interacting with remedies against cyber sickness here. You can see them touching a hat or touching a nose, and this activates different content in the virtual environment, which is supposed to help against cyber sickness. For some students, these techniques work very well. Here we see a tunneling, which is done when you move your head, so you get less sick or less motion sickness. And those are just some examples of how we can integrate interactive objects which change the environment into a VR learning platform. So this brings me back to our idea for chemistry education. Just like we implemented these examples, we can also implement 3D models of organic molecules, for example. And we are planning to develop this within a student project. But before we start this, we want to explore what's feasible with the chemistry content. And that is why we will visit the Uni Oviedo in January to see what's feasible and what we might also be able to implement in our existing VR application. I'm going to bring up now, please, next slide, a bit more information about why VR might support learning in abstract chemical structure, or why not. This is also something we still have to find out. So I'm briefly connecting this to the different dimensions of reality and also the concept of the mental model. So we have different forms of reality. There's the physical reality, which surrounds us, which we can enhance or augment with screens or other technologies to make it a mixed reality. Then we have the virtual reality, which I just showed you, and our mental reality, in which we create mental models. Next slide, please. So in general, a mental model is a simplified internal representation of how something works. And different people often have different mental models of the same processes because these models are shaped by our previous experiences, by training, and by instruction. Next slide, please. So usually our mental models are formed based on physical reality, so the things we can see, touch, or experience. And when we enter a mixed or a virtual reality, we compare what we see in the simulation with the mental model we already have. Next slide, please. So if the virtual environment matches our expectations, we accept it easily. And if it differs too much, we might feel irritated unless we consciously allow ourselves to suspend our disbelief. Next slide. So chemistry, and especially organic molecules, are an interesting case because unlike most objects, molecules do not have directly accessible physical partners or twins. So we cannot see or touch them with our senses. So our mental model of a molecule is not based on physical experience, but constructed from, for example, diagrams or descriptions or conventions in chemistry. Next slide. So the question this raises for us, which we also want to explore further in this project, is what happens when we create a virtual 3D representation of something that has no visible physical counterpart, and how does this influence the mental model that students build? And how does this affect, of course, the way they learn? So in other domains like mechanical engineering, a virtual reality often mirrors an object that exists in the real world, a digital twin. And for molecules, there's no such directly observable real twin. So VR, or the extended reality that we create, therefore becomes the primary space in which learners experience this object. And this might influence the way that their mental models form, adapt, or conflict with their existing knowledge. Next slide, please. So what we already know is that we cannot assume that what is learned in VR or XR is directly applicable to the real world. And this is already a well-known issue. But in our case, we are dealing with an abstract concept like organic molecules that do not have a directly observable physical counterpart. So one of the questions that we want to explore is how internal and external validity apply when learners are working with concepts that cannot be experienced physically. So yeah, these are some of the questions that are still open. As I said, we're meeting in January in Oviedo, and yeah, now I have introduced one possibility of implementing abstract chemistry content into an immersive technology like VR. But we have also developed a use case where you can use AR to integrate modules, and for that, I would like to pass on to my project partner, Jeremiah.
Thanks, Fiona. Thanks, Raquel. I'm just going to share my own screen here, if that's okay. So,
Oh. Yeah, it's.
are you seeing my screen?
Yeah.
Yep, perfect. Okay, so yeah, I'm just going to pick up here from where Fiona left off. So Fiona was talking primarily about using virtual reality, where you're fully immersed in that virtual space. But we were trying to think about how these kind of abstract ideas can be represented in other kind of spaces within that immersive technology continuum. So when we say immersive or extended reality technologies, there's a whole kind of umbrella area where you have virtual reality at the very end, that fully virtual space that Fiona was talking about. But along that continuum, there are other examples where you have mixed realities, and augmented reality is one of those. And augmented reality is where you overlay these digital objects over the real world. So it's kind of blending that virtual content with a live camera feed that's in your kind of direct line of sight. And this basically tracks the environment that you're in, and then anchors objects, digital objects that you've rendered into that space. And so if you're not familiar with the technology, the most familiar examples that people would typically know would be Pokemon Go, which is a kind of a very popular augmented reality game. And also IKEA have an app where you know, if you want to look at the furniture in your room without actually buying it, you can use the app to kind of see what that couch or whatever will look like in your room. And there in the bottom there of the slide, you can see that virtuality continuum where you have virtual reality on the very far end and augmented reality kind of in the middle on that continuum. So to kind of understand the different ways that we can kind of teach these chemistry concepts, Fiona has been looking at the viewer side of it, and I've been looking at the augmented reality side of it. So with that said, I've kind of created a prototype, a kind of a proof of concept, kind of a simple version of this that might be used for learning and teaching. So the idea is that you would use a textbook style or a document of some sort, that you would have the chemistry molecular formula on the page. The students would use their own phone or mobile device to track those objects, and then they would see a visual representation of the molecule. So I prototyped that up, which I'm going to show you here in a quick video. And just a caveat here, this demonstrates my very, very narrow understanding of chemistry, and not Raquel's very detailed, in-depth understanding of it. So this is really just a proof of concept to see if the ideas work, and then we can kind of think about it further from there. So I'm just going to play this short video. It's about 1.5 minutes long. Sorry. Sorry, the thing is in the way. Okay, so that gives you an idea of the tool. So Yeah, so you can see the kind of the application there. It's a very simplified idea, again, just proof of concept, but it starts to address some of the questions that we've been talking about. So I guess one of the things I would be thinking about in relation to this from an instructional design perspective is about cognitive load management. So as Fiona was highlighting, here we're trying to deal with like abstract concepts, chemistry that don't have that twin in the real world, so it's easy to kind of see. So augmented reality, I think, is useful if you think back to that example in terms of removing extraneous load. So for example, students can use their mobile device to scan the image and see one representation of it. If they need additional information, they can use the little colored triggers to add additional information if they want to. So information can be layered with text, with audio, as you heard there, other graphics, other images, and so on. So you can kind of demand, on demand drawing extra information as and when you need it. And again, similarly, because students are using their own devices, there's that accessibility and differentiation piece, so they can adjust that level of difficulty. So again, drawing in or removing additional information as and when they need, and drawing in additional supports to kind of pace their learning as well. Again, in terms of feedback, it's very, very useful. So I think AR enables instant corrective or confirmatory feedback. So you can add questions into it, for example, check responses, get feedback, and so on, which is very, very useful. And it encourages experimentation without fear of failure, which is very, very nice as well. And just in terms of this, in terms of relation to VR, some other work that I've done on another topic with colleagues in MTU, we were looking at the use cases for VR and augmented reality in the classroom. And for the VR, I guess we found that you kind of need someone on board that can help with the technology if students aren't familiar with using a VR headset. And also it's for some students, it might be a newer technology and they're not so comfortable with it. Whereas when we got them to try the augmented reality approach, this kind of BYOD, bring your own device approach, where students just use their own phone, they use their own technology that they're comfortable with. We found that it increased learner engagement and agency. So they were in control of the device. They knew their phone. They found it kind of accessible, and they found it very kind of collaborative and active. So, they would kind of look at it and kind of talk to their peers automatically without prompts as well. So I think augmented reality has a lot of affordances in that sense. So I guess that's kind of my side of it, looking at the AR thing. I guess the next part of the project, as Fiona talked about, is going to visit Raquel's lab to talk to them about the VR solution, and then I guess we'll move the project forward from there. So I might hand it back to you, Raquel or Fiona, if you want to wrap up. Raquel, maybe.
Sorry. Yeah, I should have, anyway, I had a slide that is missing some. Anyway, as Jeremiah and Fiona said, we are going to keep on exploring the immersive technologies in the classroom. So we already have the first step, and we are going to keep on working. From the visit of Fiona, probably here the thing is that, as Jeremiah said, we have two very different approaches, because you need a little bit of organic chemistry to understand the tools. And so is going to be very useful, the visit of Fiona, that we can explain a little bit the basics of what we need in the classroom. Because otherwise, as I say, it's very difficult to understand in general of organic chemistry. And as Fiona say, it's not something that you can interact with in the real life, because you cannot see and you cannot touch organic molecules. So we are going to have this meeting on January, and we are going to move from there. But we already have some interesting models to work on. So we hope that we can have something more tangible at probably at the end of next year.
Thank you so much. It was really wonderful to hear about your project. I know nothing about organic chemistry, but this made me want to learn more, and seeing the different tools that you were using in your project and hearing that you're planning to continue the cooperation. This is really wonderful. Thank you for sharing this with us today. We have a couple of moments for questions, maybe 4 minutes. Are there any questions for the presenting team? Carlia, please.
Just a quick one. Congratulations. It's a very interesting project. I was wondering, taking into account what Raquel just said at the end when she was wrapping up, what kind of learning behaviors do you want to see when students work with 3D molecules or VR for organic chemistry?
First of all, in the last students nowadays are very easily distracted with the Blackboard teaching, very easily, and they tell me, "Oh, you are moving the molecule in the Blackboard, but we are bored, so we look at the other way, and when we look back, the molecule changed, and we don't know how to." So first of all, we need to capture their attention. And second of all, not everyone, and this is not everyone has the same ability to see,
To visualize rotation,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah,
for example,
I think that it's genetic.
yeah.
Some from psychology can tell you more, but they tell us that not everyone has the same ability to capture 3D molecule from a 2D environment. So it's going to help them a lot, because we use models, these models in the classroom, but if I move in the model, it's not the same as everyone is moving their models. And the models are, the physical models are very expensive. You are not going to try all the students to buy a physical model. And this way you can make this more accessible to everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Great question. Any final question for the project team? You can raise your hand or open your mic.
I just wanted to add one thing. I think the biggest advantage of using technologies like VR or AR doesn't really make a difference there is engaging the students more, because if you're interacting with the content that you're learning with, then you're more able to keep it in your head and to also imagine abstract concepts. So I think this is like the biggest advantage that we all also see in our teaching, because we're already applying VR and we're already applying 3D models of other stuff. For example, for us, we have a big VR glasses model in our VR campus. And what we see is that you can't really take apart a VR glasses because then you break them initially. But if you're just explaining to students which parts it contains, then they're not going to be able to keep it in their minds as well as if they, I don't know, take it apart and put it back together in the VR. So that's like, I think the biggest advantage is like situative and experiential learning that we'd have and with those technologies. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thanks for your presentation today. This was really wonderful again to hear what you've been doing. And we're now going to move on to the final presentation of today, which is entitled Using Assessment of, For, and As, Learning to Develop a More Impactful and Authentic Intercultural Communication Learning Experiences for Students of MTU and HTA. David, and yes, please, floor is over to you.
Hi, everyone. Just wondering if you can hear me okay. Yeah.
Yes.
Cool. With a very snappy title. So myself, this is from myself, Dave O'Hanlon. I'm in Munster Technological University, and Kelly, I don't know, do you want to?
Yeah, and Kelly Bochmüller teaching English in the Institute of Foreign Languages at HKA, so yeah, Karlsruhe University of Applied Sciences.
And we met originally at an INGENIUM staff academy in Iași, in Romania. We both presented, and I remember Kelly's presentation being very interesting. I said she might be an interesting person to work with on a challenge I was facing. So I teach international communication to students in second and third year in business degrees. And I was trying to teach about international communication with students who were all from Munster Technological University. So there was kind of a lack of diversity in our class. We would be talking about the challenges of communicating internationally without kind of authentic experiences of communicating internationally. And students, I was finding, would maybe find sources that would talk about what people in other cultures were like, and maybe a bit uncritical about it when they were thinking about how they would maybe approach business communication with them. So that was a challenge I was having. Kelly, you're on mute.
Okay, maybe I just keep it on. Thanks. So yes, the business English course, which I've been teaching for many years, is a mixture of students from all over the university, really, different years, different majors, and majority are still students from Germany, mixed in with some internationals, but mainly speaking German, and this leads to we have group work where they must speak mostly all English with each other, but the opportunity to actually have more authentic and natural communication using English as a lingua franca has always been a challenge. And when I get international students in my courses and then they do group work, it just suits more for the situation. And so trying to think about how to improve or increase the chance of an international experience to use and communicate in English authentically was my challenge I was looking at.
So what we were looking at is how you could do something interesting with with assessment. So like we were talking about earlier in the session, you can have different ways that assessment can help with learning. I suppose what we were particularly zoning in on was assessment as learning, and we were interested in how we could use that approach to help students to become very reflective and also help develop that kind of evaluative judgment around their communication skills within an international context. So we got together anyway, and we met Jeremiah, who was a great help to us with setting up the technology, and we started planning together. These are what our students would look like. The MTU students are there on the left in a lovely tiered classroom, and then the HKA students are there on the right with their lovely round tables. So we were interested in helping with our own modules and trying to, I suppose, develop more authentic learning experiences for our own modules. But we were also, I suppose, interested in, if you are doing COIL, Collaborative Online International Learning, are there things you can do to kind of make to enhance the learning really around intercultural communication by doing some of these assessment as learning type activities? We were also interested in feedback. Feedback is something that across cultures people would talk about as being something that can be different. So we were interested in, can you get the students maybe delivering feedback and receiving feedback and thinking about feedback in ways that maybe challenges their stereotypes around what feedback is going to be like, or gets them thinking about the influence of culture on feedback practices. And And I suppose the third point there, really, could we give them kind of compelling stimuli for reflection around their own communication? So there was a lot of work in terms of setting all of this up. As you'll see, we had a lot of different steps in the process. We traveled to each other's universities and did a lot of planning around how the sessions would run. Kelly, I'm going to hand over for you to tell us a bit about.
Oh, yes. And then we decided to create presentations about the topic of giving, of active listening. And so we decided to do like a good versus bad case of presenting internationally. And Dave was so kind to do the, let's say, not so great, competent, to demonstrate the perhaps what we didn't want them to do in the quote bad presentation. And I tried my best to create a version that we could say represented a well done international presentation for an international audience, both on the topic of active listening, and the students needed to view these presentations. So at first we thought we would have them all log in to the Moodle that we set up, and then we in the end also linked in our own LMS programs directly into our course LMS the video links, had them watch them at home, also played them in the classroom, and they needed to decide how well done were the two presentations, what was done well, what was done not so well. And then they needed to, as well, come up with their own criteria in groups, what they thought would be the criteria to evaluate a presentation. So the main criteria, we used a Padlet in my classroom where the students sat in groups and decided on the 8 criteria useful for evaluating presentations. And so we had, for example, some groups, they all came up with their own 8. So there were a lot of, here on the left side, you can actually see when they wrote into the Padlet what were things done well for the presentation, not done so well, and then also come up with their 4 groups came up with 8 criteria. And then in the end, we used AI to reflect and ask AI to look at our 4 groups, 8 criteria, and where did the AI see the overlaps and the similarities or differences. And then we generated through some give and take prompting with AI an overview of then the 8 consolidated criteria that integrated all components of those 4 groups criteria. So in the end, you can see the first 4. The first was structure, the second body language, the third delivery, and the fourth content and preparation. And then there were 4 more as well that got consolidated.
We did a similar process then in MTU as well. So we had an MTU rubric and we had a HK rubric as well. And then after that, what we did was we got the students then to deliver feedback to the presenters. So Moodle was very handy for this, the INGENIUM Moodle platform. So we had a discussion forum set up and the students were able to actually deliver feedback into the discussion forum in a kind of an audio manner. So I was going to play that there for us now. So just bear with me 1 second and I will share my screen with that. Hopefully it'll work. Oh, 1 second there now. Just getting the audio right. So this first one is from ACDC. They were the one of our groups from Ireland.
So we have 5 areas.
Can I check you can hear that?
Yes.
Areas that you could have improved on. Our first is your use of slang. You used Irish slang, idioms, and Irish sayings that people in other countries might not understand. Secondly, you were not engaging. There was a lack of enthusiasm, and you seemed bored. Our third point is that you were reading off the slides and you came across as unprepared. Like sometimes you were confused at what you were reading. Our fourth point is that you were going off on tangents unnecessarily and over-explaining everything.
Okay, so that gives you a feel for what they thought of me. And hopefully you're not thinking the same thing at the moment, but maybe you are, I don't know. Okay, this is what we'll say the students from HK.
Of the topic and what he was talking about, but there were a few things he should improve. So first of all, I think the delivery needs a bit of improvement. He talked really monotonous, and also he had a thick accent sometimes, which made it hard to understand. And also the lack of enthusiasm, which you could see in the body language and also in the facial expressions. Which also made it a little bit harder to stick with him.
So I'll go back to my slides now, 1 sec. Okay, so then after that,
Dave, there's like a gray kind of thing in the middle of the slide. I don't know.
okay.
It's like a box. Oh yeah, that's better a bit.
Okay. So basically, then for my own course on international communication, the MTU students were able to then reflect on the feedback that they heard. We were playing the different feedback, and they had been hypothesizing about what they had expected based on maybe some reading up they had done around communication in Germany. And then other things that they were doing would have been that they would have self-assessed themselves against the rubrics that they made for an assignment they were doing in the module. And when we did the synchronous session, okay, so we did a synchronous session as well, they would have gotten some feedback from each other on their presentations as well. So Kelly, I'll hand over to you for the synchronous.
Mm-hmm. So then we found a date and a time that could work for both of our groups. Some overlap in our Monday courses. That was as well at the beginning planning phase, something we made sure of. We wanted to do our best to allow the synchronous phase to really have a chance to work. So we chose our groups that already meet on Mondays. Then we were there in the synchronous session on the day, I think the 17th of November, something like this. And we met and the students gave each other feedback. So with the case of the HKA students, they do a business simulation the whole semester long. And this was one phase in the simulation where they needed to collect their market research for their business idea. That meant getting a kind of focus group style of feedback in an interview, as well as a survey style feedback based on the online survey questions that they had created. So during the synchronous meeting, they conducted the interview questions live, and then the MTU students as well completed the online feedback surveys. I think you had them do it right after class or after we left, maybe this. And at any rate, we noticed that we got then as well the online feedback from the additional entries that were there in the online survey. And then Dave, your students had another project they wanted feedback on.
Yeah, so like Kelly's had their business idea and they got feedback from our students, and then our students had to come up with an INGENIUM student partnership project. And the idea was that they would hypothetically involve students from HK in it, and then they presented to the HK students and got some feedback on their ideas from the students from HKA. And again, that gave us a stimulus for reflection in the classroom as well. And then so they were getting feedback. They were looking at how feedback was getting provided, and for the HKA students, that helped them to tweak and change their presentations for Kelly's assessment, and for the NTU students, they had a presentation later on as well where they got some ideas from the students from HK which they could incorporate. So I suppose between the various asynchronous activities, the assessment as learning, and the synchronous opportunities, we managed to get very kind of authentic experiences that were relevant to two kind of quite different modules, without the students having to, I suppose, travel. I suppose, like we were talking about earlier, in terms of engagement and getting students to pay attention and stuff like that, we had very kind of engaging, active activities that provoked students to really think deeply about stuff. Certainly having to make a rubric, evaluate themselves against the rubric, think about how feedback was getting delivered. And, they were also doing a project on international communication simultaneously to this. So there was a lot of depth really to what the MTU students were doing. And then the students in HK got the opportunity to really practice with people from different contexts and stuff. And I suppose the assessment as learning across borders can be a very fruitful way, we felt, to learn about culture, including questioning stereotypes that people would have had, because the idea of hypothesizing what they might encounter and then experiencing it for real was really good to help people kind of challenge some of the ideas that they would have. So other things then that came out of it, we had some nice recorded videos that we might use again. Some of the co-constructed rubrics would be very helpful again for the future. And we got a nice proof of concept about kind of the coil idea we had. And I suppose an interesting aspect of it was the students really engaged very well in the breakout rooms. And a lot of that was probably down to the way it was all planned out. And Kelly, I'll hand over to you again. Sorry for the future plans.
Yeah, so we as well at HKA are working on doing a BIP, or blended intensive program, and we've already had some meetings about that with another colleague of mine who's leading that, but I'll be supporting that. I think Dave is also supporting that on the MTU side. I think Finland and so in France is also involved, and the HR project. So this is for the coming semester. I've just applied to do this again in the new round of applications to continue on with the project, but in still with business English for me, but a new semester of students, and with Dave with his students studying, I think it's human resources management. And so since we in the business English simulation as well have a module which is based on recruitment, or basically on recruitment, where they learn about the recruitment process and applying in English and doing interviews in English for jobs. And so we'd like to incorporate a new coil basically into the coming semester for our students at HKA to then, just to sum it up in a short way, the synchronous activity would then be an interview where the HR students studying HR at MTU would then interview our students applying to jobs in English. And of course, the focus is a language course. So then they would get some feedback on how did they do in their interviews in English from Dave's students. and future iterations of these. Yeah. Also what we've just completed, we could do that again, potentially in the next winter semester, since that's when the international communication students of Dave's would then again be starting their semester. And one, for me, the future plan would also be, I've realized how well this works with the students in business English to have them reflect on the criteria of a presentation to create a rubric. I would probably integrate this still into my future courses because I notice the ownership then they take more in the process of understanding what makes a good presentation, and then trying to achieve that in a part of what we did after the Synchronous feedback activity was they created their own video pitches, and then they watched each other's video pitches and gave each other feedback on how well they did in the video pitch presentation about their business idea. And that was really enhanced engagement. There was a lot of, I felt the students were very engaged. I would say very rarely phones were being taken out. We were like face to face in the real world, experiencing a wonderful classroom atmosphere. So doing this whole project brought me a new energy into what I did. And I think also that reflected in the students' engagement as well.
And then like we had the summit of, like our students then as well were doing the summit of at the end, but they were judging themselves against the rubrics that they created as well for their reflections then as well. So there was all sorts of assessment of foreign as learning thrown into everything really, and it was very interesting to experiment with it and see how it worked, and a nice stimulus for intercultural communication. So yeah, happy to answer any questions or have a chat about anything.
Thank you so much, Kelly and David. That was really wonderful to hear. And as someone who deals with helping people speak English every day and present themselves, I think this would also be a tremendous benefit for staff within the Alliance as well. I can see the benefit for both students and staff, and it was really wonderful to learn about this. Thank you. And also great to see that this was an example of cooperation that started from you meeting both in Staff Academy in Romania in, what was it, last year, the year before, when we were there. Just really wonderful. I will stop talking and invite questions from anybody that might have them. Please raise your hand, open your mic. Carly, I can see your hand going up.
Yeah, just a quick one. Congratulations. That was brilliant. A very good example of assessment as learning application, really working in two different contexts. Well done. I was really impressed with how you both approached it from your different disciplines, let's say. Not so different, but different. My question is, and I know it's a tough question, but I would like you to consider it, not to answer it right now. You don't really have to, but it would bug me if I did what you did. That would be, what evidence indicates that the synchronous and the asynchronous activities and assessment as learning practices were effective in both cultural contexts? You know, because you talked about intercultural aspects of it. Did you measure that? And if you didn't, I think you should. And if you do, then that's action research validating what you have done. And that would be brilliant for you to make a publication as well out of it. Please don't answer my question. I'm just putting it out there.
Yeah, I mean, that had been the plan, and the students are still they're not finished yet and stuff like that. So, like we got some informal feedback. So I do this thing where they write impressions down and stuff like that of the thing, and they scrumple up the paper and they throw it down to get a bit of anonymous, open-ended feedback. In terms of hard measures, we haven't. I suppose we're looking at the proof of concept at the moment, and maybe might look to that in the future. Or Kelly, I don't know if you wanted to comment.
So what I can say is that we will have a teaching evaluation where I've added some additional questions, at least to get some comments, and I still have the chance to do a survey-like questionnaire with them that I'm now that you say that, maybe I should do this.
And you should do it both ends, for both courses so that you can compare. Yeah.
Yeah, but will at least have some quotes from anecdotal type evidence from the 2 questions that I have, and I'll see that after I enter the grades in February. So I won't.
Well done to both of you, though.
Yeah.
Well done. It was really nice to see that.
Thank you.
I think Tom had a question there about this, the different timings around the semester, and I suppose, I mean, we discussed it, and so I think HK started a little later or before MTU, but we figured that one out. There was a lot of kind of figuring out, but we managed to do it.
Yeah, like MTU starts earlier in September. We start in the beginning of October. MTU ends earlier, but we have overlap, luckily. And also we had an hour's overlap in our actual course timing. So we didn't need to try to bring students out of their normal class time to participate, which was helpful for sure.
And as such, like a lot of the time with COIL, you'd see universities, they say, right, we'll do a whole module, 12 weeks. They work together in a group all the way through. I suppose what we were interested in doing is like, if you could do just something for a few weeks, that could complement maybe if we did this in the future, if you had something like, how do these kind of little interactions work? I suppose we're interested in that, the thing that might be a scaffold for a bigger project. So we were really only looking at a 2 or 3 week thing, and because of that, we managed that. If we were doing a 12-week thing, it'd be very challenging.
But also because of the differences, we also had the strategy of what to do asynchronously to still engage them with each other without having to be simultaneously doing those activities. So that was also very helpful to have those different like steps and then asynchronous, synchronous.
And that was part of why we looked at asynchronous. So it's like, obviously in INGENIUM, you have people on all different timetables and semesters. So we need to think about asynchronous stuff for internationalizing the curriculum, and what are some different kind of cool ways you can do it.
Thank you so much. I think that's all we have time for today. Thank you to all of the presenters for taking time to share the results of their Education Lab projects. We will have more of these webinars in about 7 months when phase 2 ends. And there's lots of INGENIUM events and happenings coming up in the spring. So stay tuned from our INGENIUM website and follow all of the news there. And it just leaves me to thank everybody once more and wish you all a very happy holidays to all those that celebrate, and wonderful new year. Thank you for joining today.
You too. Thank you very much.
Thanks, you too. Bye.